Ryan lived on a quiet human settlement at the edge of a large desert. The land was peaceful, but it was also lonely. His small house stood alone near long fields of sand and stone. The wind moved across the land every morning, bringing dust and silence with it. Ryan spent his days repairing tools, growing small crops in the dry soil, and checking old communication devices. He was a strong man, but his eyes carried a deep sadness. Anyone could see he was waiting for something or someone. Years ago, Ryan had met an alien woman named Mira. She was from a distant system and had come with a peaceful group of travelers. Her skin had a soft glow, and her eyes shined like small stars when she was happy. Ryan had never seen anything more beautiful. They had learned each other's language, shared stories, and found comfort in each other's company. Slowly, they had fallen in love and lived together on this quiet land, but trouble had visited Mira's home system. Her family had sent urgent messages calling her back. She told Ryan she must return for a short time. She promised she would come back soon, and Ryan believed her. But the days became months, and the months slowly became years. Mira did not return, and no message came. The communication lines to her world went silent. The local people whispered behind Ryan's back. They said Mira had left him forever. They said she would not come back. They laughed and called him foolish for waiting. But Ryan held on to hope. He believed that Mira had not forgotten him. He believed she would return one day. At night, he would sit outside his house and watch the stars. He would look at the direction where Mira's home system was located. He wondered if she was looking toward him too. Even after years passed, Ryan's hope did not break. He continued his daily life with discipline and a quiet heart. He cared for the land, fixed broken machines, and learned how to survive almost alone. He had become known as the quiet man in the desert settlement. Some respected him for his skill and patience. Others avoided him because he rarely spoke. Ryan did not mind. He did not need many words. He needed only hope. One evening, after the sun had set behind the dunes, Ryan stood outside his house again. The sky was dark, but the stars were bright. He felt something different in the air. The wind felt heavier, like it carried a message. He looked up and studied the stars as he had done countless times before. Then he saw a small moving light high above the sky. It grew brighter and larger. Ryan narrowed his eyes and held his breath. Could it be a ship? His heart began to beat faster. Many ships passed through this part of space, but most did not land here. Still, something about this one caught Ryan's attention. It changed speed in a familiar pattern. His memory sparked. He had seen this pattern before many years ago. When Mira had first arrived, her ship had used the same approach. Ryan felt a spark in his chest, like a flame lighting up after a long sleep. The people in the settlement began to notice the light too. They gathered outside their homes and stared at the sky with nervous whispers. Some thought it might be pirates. Others thought it was a supply ship. But Ryan did not move from his spot. His heart was full of old memories and rising hope. The ship entered the lower atmosphere and slowed down. It was long, made of smooth metal that reflected the moonlight. Strange symbols glowed on its sides. The engines hummed softly, almost like a voice. It lowered toward the landing field outside the settlement walls. Dust rose like a wave as it touched the ground. The crowd of settlers took several steps back, unsure if they should welcome or hide. Ryan walked toward the ship, slowly but without fear. His legs felt heavy and his heart felt light at the same time. Every step felt like a memory of Mira calling him long ago. When he reached the ship, a soft hiss filled the air as the ramp lowered to the ground. Warm yellow light poured from inside the ship, pushing away the desert night. For a moment, nothing happened. The settlers watched from far away. Ryan stood alone in front of the ramp. Then footsteps echoed from inside the ship. A tall figure appeared in the doorway. Ryan stared, his breath caught in his throat. The figure came into the light. It was Mira. Her skin still carried the same soft glow, but her face was older. She looked tired, like she had traveled through many storms and battles. But her eyes were still bright, and when she saw Ryan, they shined like they used to. She stepped down the ramp slowly. Ryan felt the world around him go quiet. He could not move. His voice refused to come out. Mira smiled gently and stopped in front of him. For a moment, they simply stared at each other. All the years of waiting, pain, and hope gathered in that silent moment. Ryan finally whispered her name, and his voice trembled. Mira reached out and touched his hand. But then something unexpected happened. Mira turned and looked back into the ship. She called softly in her language. Two small shapes moved into the doorway. Ryan blinked, confused. The shapes stepped forward into the light. They were children. Their skin had a soft glow like Mira's. Their hair was dark like Ryan's. Their eyes were bright and curious, like stars reflecting water. They had small antennae hidden gently behind their hair. They moved shyly, looking at Ryan with wide eyes. Ryan felt like time stopped. His heart thumped loudly in his chest. He did not move. He did not understand. Mira placed a hand gently on the children's shoulders. She looked at Ryan with both love and sadness. She spoke in a quiet voice. She introduced them as her children. She said they were also his children. Ryan felt the ground under him shift. He had dreamed of Mira coming back, but he had never imagined this. The settlers gasped from far behind. Some whispered that hybrid children were rare. Others stepped back with surprise. Ryan did not hear them. He only saw Mira and the children. He knelt slowly to meet their eyes. The children hesitated, then moved closer. They smelled like something familiar and distant at the same time. Ryan's hands trembled as he touched their hair gently. Tears formed in his eyes without permission. Mira stood near him and placed her hand on his shoulder. She explained that she had stayed in her home system to protect the children from danger. She had waited until the danger passed. She had taken a long journey through unsafe space. Many times she had almost turned back. But she wanted her children to meet their father. She wanted them to grow in peace. Ryan listened quietly, his heart filled with warmth, confusion, joy, and fear all at once. These children were his blood. They carried his heritage and Mira's. They were living proof that different worlds could join. Ryan lifted his head and looked at Mira. She smiled softly. He stood and hugged her gently. The children watched with wide smiles. The settlers continued to stare, unsure what to do. Some looked curious, others cautious, but Ryan did not care about their eyes. He only cared about the family standing before him. His loneliness was ending. His waiting was rewarded. Hope, once quiet and fragile, now stood beside him in living form. The night wind brushed past them. The stars shined above like witnesses. Ryan took a slow breath. His life was about to change forever. He held the children's hands gently, one on each side. Mira stepped close to him. Together they walked toward his home at the edge of the desert. Their story had begun again. Their journey would not be easy. But Ryan was ready. He had waited for years. Now he would not let anything separate them again. Ryan walked beside Mira and the children through the cool desert night. The stars shined brightly above them, and the warm glow of his small house looked like a safe light in the darkness. As they reached the door, the children looked around with wide eyes, curious about this strange new place. They held tightly to Ryan's hands, feeling nervous but also excited. Inside the house, the air smelled like old wood and dry sand. Ryan had built the house with his own hands many years ago. It was simple but strong. The walls were thick, and the windows were small, built to protect against desert storms. There was a small table in the center and a bed in the corner. Ryan looked around and felt suddenly embarrassed. He had lived alone for many years. The house was not ready for a family. Mira walked around slowly, touching the walls as if she could read the memories stored in them. She smiled softly and told Ryan that the house felt warm. The children climbed onto the chairs and looked at everything with silent wonder. Ryan watched them carefully, trying to understand their body language. They moved differently than human children. Their eyes sparkled in the dim light, and their small antennae twitched when they felt curious. Ryan opened a cupboard and took out a small basket of fruit he had collected earlier. He placed it on the table and told the children they could eat. The children looked at the fruit, then at Mira for permission. Mira nodded gently, and the children picked up the fruit slowly, smelling and tasting it with surprise. They giggled softly. Ryan smiled. Their laughter was like music in the quiet house. After they finished eating, Mira explained they had been traveling for long hours. They needed rest. Ryan nodded and prepared a bed for the children near his own. He did not have many blankets, but he gave them everything he had. Mira sat on the edge of the bed and helped them lie down. She sang softly in her language, and the children slowly closed their eyes. The melody was strange but beautiful. It reminded Ryan of warm nights long ago when Mira had sung to him. He stood quietly, not wanting to break the moment. When the children were asleep, Ryan and Mira went outside to talk. The desert wind moved gently around them. The night was quiet except for distant animal sounds. Ryan looked at Mira seriously and asked why she had stayed away so long. Mira sighed and sat on a stone near the door. She explained that her home system had faced danger from a strong enemy. If she had returned too early, the children might have been found and taken away. She had waited until the threat was reduced. Only then could she travel safely across the stars. Ryan listened carefully. He could see the sadness in her eyes. He could also see the courage she had carried for years. She had protected the children with her life. Ryan felt a deep respect for her. He told her she should have sent a message. Mira lowered her head and said communication lines had been blocked by enemy forces. She had tried many times but could not reach him. He understood. Space was full of danger and sometimes messages were lost forever. Ryan asked if the danger was truly gone. Mira hesitated. She said many systems were recovering, but some enemies still searched for hybrid children. They feared what such children might become. Ryan felt a cold chill in his chest. He looked at the sleeping house. He did not want anyone to hurt his family. Mira placed a hand on his shoulder and promised they were safe for now. But she also warned him to stay alert. They went back inside. Ryan watched the children sleep peacefully. Their breathing was calm, and their glowing skin dimmed slightly as they rested. He felt a strange mix of pride and fear. These children were rare. They were living proof that two worlds could join. But rare things often drew unwanted attention. He returned to his bed and tried to sleep, but his mind was full of thoughts. What would the settlement think tomorrow? Would they accept the children? Would they judge them? Would they whisper the same cruel words they had whispered about Mira? Ryan stared at the ceiling, feeling the weight of responsibility on his chest. Finally, tiredness won, and he fell asleep. Morning came slowly, with the warm sun pushing through the windows. The children woke first. Their eyes opened wide, and they sat up with excitement. They walked around the room, touching objects and pointing at them. They asked Mira questions in their language. Ryan smiled as he watched. He wished he understood their words. Mira promised she would teach him slowly. Ryan prepared breakfast. He placed bread and fruit on the table. The children ate happily. After eating, Mira suggested they explore the settlement. Ryan agreed, but he felt nervous. He did not know how the people would react. Still, he wanted his children to feel welcome in this new home. They walked together toward the center of the settlement. People stared at them. Some whispered quietly. Some pointed. A few smiled kindly. Ryan held the children's hands tightly to make them feel safe. Mira walked proudly, her head lifted. She was not afraid of judgment. One older woman approached them with careful steps. She asked if these were Ryan's children. Ryan answered yes. The woman looked at the children with gentle eyes. She smiled and gave them small candies. The children looked at Ryan for permission. When he nodded, they tasted the candies and smiled brightly. The woman laughed softly and patted their heads. Ryan felt relief. Not everyone feared what was different, but not everyone was kind. A group of men stood near a shop and watched with cold eyes. Their voices were low, but Ryan heard enough. They questioned if such children should live among humans. They worried about danger. Ryan stopped walking and stared at them calmly. He did not speak, but his eyes showed strength. The men looked away. Mira placed her hand on his arm, reminding him to stay calm. The children did not understand the tension. They only looked at the colorful objects in shop windows. They continued the walk. They visited a small school building. The teacher stepped outside and greeted them warmly. She asked if the children would attend classes. Mira said yes, but first they needed time to learn human language fully. The teacher smiled and offered help. Ryan felt thankful. Education was important. He wanted the children to grow strong and wise. As they walked back home, the children laughed and pointed at everything. They asked many questions in their soft alien language. Mira answered patiently. Ryan watched them and felt joy rise in his heart. He had waited for years, and now he walked with a family beside him. His loneliness was gone. Back at the house, Ryan showed the children how to water the small garden. The children placed their hands near the plants, and something amazing happened. The plants lifted slightly, as if responding to the children's energy. They glowed faintly and grew a bit taller. Ryan stared with wide eyes. Mira explained that hybrid children had gentle influence over living nature. It was a gift, but one that must be hidden from the wrong eyes. Rian nodded slowly. He understood that their abilities could draw danger. He promised to protect them. He asked Mira if there were more abilities. She nodded. She said the children could sense emotions around them. They could tell if someone felt fear, anger, or kindness. This helped them read dangerous situations. Ryan thought this ability would be important in a world full of unknown threats. As the sun began to set, Ryan sat outside with the children. They watched the sky turn orange and red. The children leaned against him and spoke softly, mixing human words with alien ones. He listened with a smile. He felt peaceful for the first time in many years. Mira prepared a simple meal inside. When she called them to eat, they gathered around the table like a real family. They talked about plans. The children would learn human language. Ryan would build new rooms for them. Mira would teach him more about alien culture. After dinner, Mira stepped outside alone. She looked up at the sky with worried eyes. Something in the air felt strange. She sensed a distant energy, like someone searching across the stars. She worried that the enemy might find them one day. Ryan came out quietly and asked her what she was thinking. Mira hesitated, then looked into his eyes. She said they must be ready for anything. Ryan placed his hand over hers and promised he would protect the family with all his strength. His voice was calm but full of power. Night returned once again. The children slept peacefully. Mira rested beside them. Ryan stood outside looking at the sky. His heart was no longer lonely, but it was now filled with something new. Responsibility, fear, hope, love. He would face whatever danger came. He would not run. He had waited for his family for many years. Now that they were here, he would do everything to keep them safe. The desert wind moved around him gently like a whisper of approval. The stars watched quietly. The new beginning had truly started. Morning sunlight touched the desert settlement with a warm glow. Ryan stepped outside his house and stretched his arms. He felt stronger than he had in many years. Inside, the smell of breakfast filled the rooms. Mira was teaching the children how to mix grains and fruit into a small bowl. Ryan watched them with a smile. The children laughed when they got flour on their faces. Their antennae waved gently when they were happy. After eating, Ryan walked with the children toward the school. The teacher waved at them kindly. She asked the children to sit in the front so she could watch them carefully. At first, the children sat quietly, shy and nervous, but soon other young students started talking to them. They asked curious questions about their glowing skin and their homeworld. The children answered in mixed human and alien words. The other students giggled and clapped. Slowly, the fear faded. The children relaxed. Rian stood outside the school door and watched. He felt proud. He had worried that his children would not be accepted. Now he saw hope. After some time, he walked away to give them space. Mira waited near the house and asked how school was. Ryan smiled and told her everything was good. Mira placed her hand on his arm and looked relieved. Later, Ryan and Mira walked through the market area. People still stared sometimes, but now many waved and smiled. The settlement leader approached them and asked if Mira would share knowledge about alien farming tools. Mira agreed. She explained how certain soil could be improved with simple minerals. The leader nodded and looked thankful. They talked about trade between systems and safe travel routes. Rian watched Mira speak with confidence. She had grown stronger through her travels. The day passed slowly. When school ended, the children ran toward Ryan and hugged him. They spoke excitedly about new friends and interesting lessons. Ryan lifted them both and spun them gently. Their laughter echoed through the market. Some people smiled at the sweet moment. Others stood quietly, unsure how to react. But no one spoke against them. On the way home, the children pointed at birds flying above. They reached out their hands and whispered. The birds circled closer as if answering a silent call. Ryan watched in awe. Mira explained that hybrid children could form small bonds with animals. She asked them not to show this ability too much. The children nodded. When they reached the house, Rian gave the children small wooden toys he had carved long ago. The children stared at the toys with wonder. They moved their fingers over the shapes and felt the smooth wood. Their antennae glowed faintly. They thanked Ryan many times. He felt his heart warm. As the sun lowered, Rian and Mira sat outside and talked. Ryan asked if there were any more abilities the children might show. Mira hesitated and looked at the sky. She said hybrid children sometimes could sense distant energy. They could feel danger before others. Ryan sat quietly, letting the information sink in. He asked if that made them targets. Mira nodded slowly. Ryan felt a heavy weight in his stomach. That night, something happened. The children woke suddenly from sleep. They sat up, their eyes glowing brighter than usual. They looked toward the window where the stars shined sharply. Ryan woke as well, noticing their strange behavior. He asked what was wrong. The children pointed outside, whispering softly. Mira entered the room and knelt beside them. She placed her hands on their shoulders and listened to their words. She turned to Ryan with a serious expression. The children felt something approaching, not on the ground but in the sky. Ryan rushed outside. He looked toward the dark horizon. At first he saw nothing. Then he spotted a distant streak of red light moving among the stars. It grew brighter, then slowly faded. It was not a shooting star. It was something else. Ryan felt cold fear in his chest. Mira stepped outside and stared at the same spot. She whispered that the enemy used red scanner drones to search for hybrid signatures. They had scanned the area, but maybe the children's energy was too weak to detect clearly. But the fact that they scanned near this planet meant danger was close. Ryan clenched his fists. He refused to let fear control him. He asked Mira what they should do. Mira said they must keep the children inside more often. They could still attend school, but they should avoid showing abilities in public. Ryan agreed. He would not risk their safety. The next morning, Ryan walked the children to school again. The children were cheerful. They did not understand the full danger. Ryan tried to keep his face calm. He did not want to scare them. When he dropped them off, he spoke to the teacher privately. He asked her to watch them closely and call him if anything felt strange. The teacher promised she would protect them. Ryan then visited the settlement leader. He told him about the red streak in the sky. The leader frowned and said he would increase guard patrols. He also asked nearby systems to share any strange reports. Ryan thanked him and left. He felt slightly better knowing others would stay alert. As days passed, the children continued learning and making friends. They drew pictures of strange planets and animals. Their drawings fascinated the other students. They told stories about Mira's homeworld, and the class listened quietly. Ryan watched from afar sometimes, smiling with pride. One afternoon, as Ryan was working in his small garden, he saw the children playing behind the house. They chased each other around the trees, their laughter shining like light. Suddenly, the children stopped running. Their antennae lifted. They froze and stared at the sky. Ryan stood up quickly and looked with them. Another streak of red moved across the stars. It was closer this time. Mira ran outside after feeling the sudden energy shift. She spoke quickly to the children in her language, calming them. Ryan asked if they had been detected. Mira could not answer. She said they must be careful. She suggested building a small safe room underground. Ryan nodded. He knew how to build strong walls. He would start tomorrow. The settlement soon buzzed with whispers again. People had seen strange lights in the sky. They approached Ryan and asked questions. He explained only that they should be watchful. Some people looked nervous. Some prepared weapons in case of trouble. Others offered help to build defenses. Ryan felt touched by their support. Even those who once judged now cared. That night the children could not sleep. They sat near the window, eyes wide. Mira stayed beside them, whispering soft comfort. Ryan stood outside again, staring at the stars, waiting for any sign of danger. He held a small metal tool in his hand, ready to defend his home. The desert wind carried a strange tension. Hours passed. Then a soft hum reached Ryan's ears. He looked up sharply. A small silver drone flew near the settlement. It had red lights under its wings. It scanned the area silently. Ryan's heart pounded. He moved quickly behind a wall so it would not see him. The drone hovered for a long moment. Then it flew away into the dark sky. Ryan rushed inside and told Mira. Mira held her head in her hands. She knew what that drone meant. The enemy was close. They were searching. They might return with soldiers. Ryan looked at his sleeping children. He refused to let danger touch them. The next morning, Ryan spoke to the settlement leader again. Together, they planned a signal alert. If another drone appeared, bells would ring. Everyone would hide quietly until it passed. People began digging underground shelters. They strengthened walls. They collected food and water. The settlement worked together like a single body. Days passed with quiet tension. Sometimes the children would pause and look toward the sky, sensing distant energy. Ryan watched them closely. He learned to read their antenna movements. When they lowered, the danger passed. When they rose, danger was near. Ryan trained himself every evening. He practiced with old metal shields, heavy tools, and desert survival tricks. Mira trained her own way. She stood still, focusing her energy, controlling her breathing. She taught Ryan how to listen to the wind. She taught him how to read faint sounds from afar. Their bond grew stronger. One evening, while the family sat together at dinner, the children suddenly stood up. They pointed at the window, eyes wide. Their antennae glowed bright blue. Ryan's heart dropped. He rushed outside. He saw lights descending from the sky. Not red this time. Blue and silver. They were not drones. They were ships. 3 of them. They lowered slowly, scanning the land with wide beams. People ran to their houses. Bells began to ring across the settlement. Ryan shouted for Mira and grabbed the children. They ran to the underground shelter he had finished building. It had thick stone walls and a metal door. Mira held the children close. Outside, shadows moved across the settlement. The ships landed beyond the dunes. Ryan's heart pounded like thunder. He stared at the door. His fear was no longer just fear. It had turned into something stronger. Determination. He would not lose his family. Not now, not ever. The night grew silent. Only the heavy breathing of the family filled the small room. The children trembled, but Ryan placed his arms around them. He whispered calm promises. He looked at Mira. She nodded. Together they waited for whatever would come. Their hidden lights in the desert had been found. The real test was beginning. The news of the enemy fleet near the small planet spread quickly. It was not loud news and no one shouted, but everyone felt a quiet fear. People spoke in low voices and they looked at the sky more than usual. Ryan walked with a firm step, but his eyes showed worry. Mira stayed close, her hands folded behind her back and her face calm, but inside she was thinking fast. The children saw this change and stayed close to their father and mother. The leader of the settlement called for a meeting in the central hall. The hall was simple, with chairs made of local wood and bright lights above. Everyone gathered inside, some holding hands, some standing alone. Ryan sat in the front row, Mira beside him and the children quietly behind them. The leader spoke slowly and explained that enemy ships were seen moving in a pattern. They did not head toward the planet yet, but they were close. Ryan raised his hand and asked if the enemy might be a threat to the settlement. The leader answered that it was possible. The main fear was that the enemy would want to capture Mira and the children because they were rare. Everyone looked at Mira, but no one blamed her. They only felt fear at losing someone important to them. After the meeting, Ryan walked outside with Mira. The night sky above was full of bright stars and the air felt cold. Ryan asked Mira if she knew how strong the enemy was. Mira said they had strong ships, but not strong heart. She said they were brave only in numbers. Alone, they were weak. Ryan nodded and thought about what they could do. The children sat on the grass and looked up at the stars. They talked about worlds far away, worlds they remembered only a little. They asked if the enemy wanted to take them back. Ryan knelt and told them that no one would take them away because this was their home now. Mira placed her hand on Ryan's shoulder and said she would stand with him no matter what came. The following day, work in the settlement continued, but the mood changed. People worked faster and built stronger fences. They set up watchtowers on high ground. Ryan helped with the work, lifting heavy beams, giving advice, and fixing tools. His hands hurt by the end of the day, but he did not stop. Mira helped too, teaching defensive moves to the settlement guards. Her steps were fast and sharp, and her voice calm. The guards respected her and learned quickly. The children watched from the side until Ryan asked them to join. They learned basic moves, how to stay balanced, how to avoid danger. Their bodies were fast, faster than normal, and people noticed. A few children from the settlement clapped and asked to learn the same moves. Mira smiled and agreed to teach everyone. Days passed. The enemy fleet moved slowly in the same area. Reports came every night. People stayed awake longer and slept lightly. One night the alarm sounded. It was not a loud sound, only a soft bell. But it carried fear with it. Ryan ran outside and saw small enemy scout drones landing near the forest. Mira stood beside him, her eyes sharp. Ryan called for the guards. They gathered quickly, holding shields and stun rifles. The drones spread out, scanning the ground. If they found proof of Mira and the children, they would call the main fleet. Ryan ran forward with the guards hiding behind trees. Mira took the children back to the settlement, telling them to stay low and stay hidden. Rian moved silently through the tall grass. Then he rushed out and struck the first drone with a hard blow that cracked its shell. The guards fired their stun rifles at the second drone, sparks lighting the dark forest. The third drone flew up, its lights flashing as it scanned. Ryan climbed a fallen tree and jumped high, grabbing the drone and pulling it down. He hit it once and it stopped moving. The guards cheered in relief, but Ryan did not smile. He knew this was only the beginning. They brought the broken drones back to the settlement. The leader looked at them and frowned. He said the main fleet might come next. Ryan suggested they prepare evacuation routes. Mira suggested they send a message to allies. The leader agreed. As the sun rose the next morning, more ships appeared in the sky. They were small but shaped like sharp claws. They hovered above the buildings. People ran to shelters. Ryan picked up a stun rifle and stood at the entrance of the settlement. Mira stood beside him, her eyes focused. The children stayed in the safe room with other families. They watched through a small window, their faces pale. The first enemy ship landed near the main gate. Doors opened and tall figures stepped out. They wore dark armor and their helmets glowed faint blue. They looked around with cold eyes. Ryan took a step forward and asked why they were here. The leader of the enemy answered that they wanted the children. He said they belonged to their kind. Ryan shook his head and said the children had a home here. He said they were not property. The enemy leader raised his weapon, but before he could fire, Mira jumped forward and knocked the weapon aside. She moved faster than the eye could follow. People gasped. The guards raised their rifles and fired stun rounds at the enemy soldiers. The battle began. Ryan charged forward, blocking shots with a shield. He used his strength to push two enemies down. Mira spun and kicked another soldier away. The guards held their line, moving in unison like Mira taught them. The enemy tried to push forward, but the humans pressed harder. They fought to protect their home, their family, their hope. One enemy soldier reached the safe room and tried to break the door. The children placed their hands on the wall and a strange pulse shook the door. The soldier stepped back in shock. The pulse came again, stronger, and this time it pushed the soldier far away. The children stared at their hands, surprised but calm. Other families watched in awe. After a long fight, the enemy soldiers began to fall back. Their leader shouted orders, but his soldiers were afraid. Ryan ran at him and grabbed his weapon, throwing it to the ground. The leader looked around, saw his soldiers leaving, and ran back to his ship. The ships lifted off and vanished into the sky. Silence fell over the settlement. Then cheers filled the air. The guards hugged each other. Families cried with relief. Ryan walked to the safe room and opened the door. The children ran to him and he hugged them tightly. Mira placed her hand on his back and smiled with quiet pride. The leader of the settlement thanked Ryan and Mira. He said the battle was won, but he feared the enemy might return. Ryan agreed. He knew they needed a plan. Mira said they must train more and send a message to allies. That night, the settlement held a quiet dinner. Food was simple, but hearts were full. Ryan looked at Mira and the children. He knew they had survived something big, but he felt more was coming. He did not feel fear, though. He felt something stronger. He felt unity. As the stars shined above, Ryan promised himself he would protect his family and the settlement. He would face anything. Mira placed her hand in his and the children sat close. They did not need words. They were together, and together, they would face the next storm. The night after the battle was quiet, but sleep did not come easily to the people of the settlement. They kept waking up to check the doors and windows. Some stared at the sky through small openings, expecting more enemy ships to return. Ryan stayed awake longer than anyone. He walked around the settlement with slow steps, checking walls, gates, and watchtowers. Mira followed him, her face calm but her mind sharp. The children slept together in one room with other young ones. They held hands without speaking. Their dreams were strange, full of lights and sounds from far places. They woke up once and looked at each other, then slept again. In their hearts, they knew a big test still waited. In the morning, the leader called another meeting in the central hall. People sat quietly. The leader told everyone that scouts spotted a larger fleet moving toward the planet. It was not small ships this time. It was a full strike force. Some people gasped, some lowered their heads. Ryan stood, his voice steady, and asked how long until they arrived. The leader answered they had about 2 days. 2 days felt short and long at the same time. It was enough time to think and enough time to worry. Ryan walked out of the hall and looked at the flat horizon. He thought about his life alone before Mira returned. He remembered the quiet days, the empty home, the hope he carried. Now he stood beside his wife, his children, and a settlement that trusted him. That trust gave him strength. Mira gathered the guards and trained them harder. She taught them how the enemy moved, how they aimed, how they feared sudden charge. Her voice was patient, her movement smooth. The guards followed her steps again and again, sweat on their foreheads. They learned to move as one. The children practiced too. Ryan taught them how to breathe calmly and how to stay focused. He did not want them to fight, but he wanted them to be ready. Their ability to create pulses with their hands worried him, but he knew it could save lives. They promised to use it only when needed. Other children watched from a distance, amazed and quiet. Families packed emergency bags. They prepared shelters underground in case the main buildings fell. Engineers worked on communication towers to send a message to friendly planets. They typed fast and checked wires, hoping a reply would reach in time. Everyone helped, even elders who moved slowly but with purpose. The settlement felt like a large heart, beating in one rhythm. That night the sky changed. A red shadow appeared far above. It was not bright but strong enough to see. People stood outside and pointed. The leader announced that the fleet was now close. Panic could have spread, but Rian raised his hand and spoke loudly so all could hear. He said they would not run. He said they would stand together. Mira stood beside him and nodded. Her calm face comforted many. The next day, the final preparations began. Guards placed shields around the gate. Engineers set traps that would stun rather than harm. Drones from the settlement hovered above, ready to warn of danger. Ryan cleaned his shield and weapon. He placed his hand on the smooth surface and whispered a small thank you. Mira sharpened her blades and checked her armor. She moved like quiet wind. The children stayed in the central building with a group of guards whose job was to protect them. They sat close to the window and watched the sky. They could feel something strong approaching. Their hearts beat fast, but they stayed calm because they trusted their father and mother. At noon, the sky darkened as enemy ships covered the sun. They were bigger than before, like mountains floating in the air. Engines roared, shaking the ground. Doors opened and hundreds of enemy soldiers came down in dark suits. They marched in lines toward the settlement gate. The guards raised their rifles. Ryan stepped forward. Mira stepped beside him. The enemy leader walked ahead of his army. His armor was brighter than the others. His voice echoed through a speaker, saying the children must be given to him. He said no harm would come if they obeyed. Rian answered with steady voice that the children had a home now. He said they were not objects. Mira spoke too. She said the enemy had lost their honor. She challenged their heart. The enemy leader lifted his hand. The army charged. A loud shout broke from the guards. Weapons fired. The settlement shook. Ryan moved with strong steps, blocking shots with his shield. Mira leaped forward, striking 2 soldiers to the ground. The guards copied her moves, forming a wall of defense. The enemy soldiers pushed hard, but the humans pushed harder. Smoke filled the air. Sparks flashed. The ground shook with footsteps. Ryan saw 3 soldiers running toward the central building. He ran after them, his breath fast. He reached them before they could open the door. His shield hit one soldier, sending him back. He grabbed another by the arm and threw him to the ground. The last soldier stepped back, scared, then ran away. Inside the building, the children felt their hands warm. They placed their palms together and released a pulse. It shook the door frame, sending small waves across the building. The pulse did not harm anyone, but soldiers outside stumbled and fell. Guards nearby stared in shock. Mira saw the pulse from a distance and smiled softly. She used the moment to push forward. Her blades moved fast, disarming soldiers without injuring them too badly. Guards followed behind her, inspired. The enemy leader saw his soldiers falling back. He grew angry. He ordered heavy armor units. Large figures with thick plates marched forward. Their steps shook the ground. Their weapons fired stronger shots. Some guards fell stunned. Ryan ran to help them. He lifted a guard and carried him back behind walls. He returned again without pause. Mira faced one heavy unit alone. She dodged each shot and climbed onto its back, cutting power cables. Sparks flew and the unit fell with a loud crash. She jumped off and landed gracefully. The enemy leader marched toward the gate. He aimed his weapon at Rian. The shot fired, but the children felt it. They sent a pulse through the air. It moved like a wave and curved around their father, pushing the shot away. Ryan looked back at the central building and nodded with pride. The enemy leader stared in disbelief. He shouted that this power belonged to them. He demanded again that the children be given. The settlement guards shouted no. Their voices rose together. That voice gave strength to tired arms and shaky legs. The battle continued. More enemy soldiers fell. Their lines broke. Fear spread among them. One soldier dropped his weapon and ran. Others followed. The heavy units turned away, their lights fading. The enemy leader looked around, saw his army broken, and felt alone. Ryan stepped forward with calm steps. Mira stood at his side. The leader lifted his weapon again, but his hand shook. The children walked out of the central building and stood behind their parents. Their eyes glowed faintly with inner light, not bright, just pure. The enemy leader lowered his weapon slowly. He looked at the family and saw something he did not understand. He saw balance. He saw hope. He saw strength that did not need control. He stepped back once, twice, then ran toward his ship. His soldiers followed. Engines roared and the fleet lifted away from the planet. Silence returned. The air felt light again. People looked around. Some sat down and cried from relief. Others hugged family. Ryan took a deep breath and looked at Mira. She touched his cheek gently. The children held their hands. The leader of the settlement walked up and thanked them. He said they did not only save themselves, but everyone. He promised that from then on, the settlement would protect their family with everything they had. Days passed. Repairs began. People cleaned burnt walls and fixed broken gates. They worked with smiles this time. Guards trained daily, stronger and wiser. The children studied both human books and alien crystal tablets. They learned to control their pulses gently. One evening, a message came from friendly planets. They said they received the signal and would send help soon. They praised the settlement for standing strong. Everyone cheered. At sunset, Ryan sat on a rock near the lake. Mira sat beside him. The children played with small stones, making shapes. The sky turned orange and pink. Birds flew across. Ryan looked at his family and felt peace inside his heart. He had waited years for this moment, and now it was real. Mira placed her head on his shoulder. She whispered that she was proud. Ryan smiled. He said they could face anything in the future. The children ran to them and hugged them tightly. That night, the settlement held a feast. Lights hung across buildings. Music played. People danced. Ryan and Mira danced slowly while others clapped. The children ran in circles with other young ones laughing. When the moon rose high, Ryan stood and gave a short speech. He thanked everyone for their bravery. He said that humans had strong hearts when they stood together. People cheered loudly. Later, as everyone slept, the wind moved gently through the buildings. The stars shined brighter than ever. The planet felt alive. The settlement glowed softly. Ryan looked at his sleeping children and smiled. Mira held his hand. They stood at the door and watched the peaceful night. The danger had passed, but the future held new adventures. They were safe. They were together. They were home. And nothing in the galaxy could take that from them.